Hey, this is Flash Body Mechanics 4, pushing weight. Let's open up our scene file. Okay, so inside you can see we have the mannequin and the cube. So in this session we're going to take a look at the timing and posing that you'll need to create a character, or to create the illusion of a character pushing something heavy. As you've seen this far, the timing is the contrast of speed and motion, and is the key to creating convincing physics in animation. Clear and appealing poses communicate to the audience what the character is doing. Timing and posing and appropriate use of all the animation principles in concert with each other is what you need to create professional looking work. So I animated this earlier. So the character's going to anticipate, push up against the block and push it off the ledge, and then he's going to follow through and settle. So we'll just watch that again. Alright, so let's dive into the shot comp, and then once we do that, you'll see we'll have on the character layer our mannequin and the block both inside. And then when we go inside there, you'll see on the top, the very top layer, we have our cube, and then all the layers underneath that are the parts of our mannequin. Alright, so let's start animating in here. The first thing I'd like to do is let's leave a 6-frame hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Leave a 6-frame hold for this animation because this is not going to be a cycle. And let's lock this shadow layer. Alright, so after our hold, so this is going to be our hold here. And then we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, go 4 frames down the timeline, and let's set an anticipation pose. Alright, so when we're selecting our parts to start posing, we really want to think about what joints we want to stay connected to the torso or to the hips. So I really want to get his upper body shifted down. And then we'll just bend his knees later. I'm just going to select the entire thing, including his upper legs, just so we make sure that the hips and shoulders don't shift around too much. So let's get him down and to the left a little bit. I'm going to select his lower body, move the pivot up, and we're just going to get his body bent here. So in essence, we really are doing cutout animation. You can select one part at a time and move it, but I like to select multiple pieces just to more easily pose our character, and it's a lot faster. So I'm going to switch the torso out in the properties. I'm going to switch it to torso number 2 just to get his body bent a little bit. Actually, let's go with 3. So to bring that right foot right underneath his butt here, so that he remains balanced. Alright, so here's our anticipation pose so far. Just blocked in. Now I'm thinking about he's going to have to lean into this cube, and there's not really enough room here right now to do that. So what I should do is bring this cube away from him. I'll just do it on this frame. Now we've keyed the cube a couple of times, so if I move it on this frame, it's going to pop back over here. So it's not that big of a deal. We can fix this cube later. I'm just going to shift it back for now, just for our next pose. After he anticipates, he's going to lunge forward into this cube. So we'll make it so that he's really excited to push the cube. So I'm going to go 1 frame over, and we're going to see how this looks. I'm going to try just setting it 1 frame apart. So he's going to go from here, and in the next frame he's going to be leaning right into this cube. One thing about animating in Flash is it sort of dictates a style. Anytime there's a quick movement, a character performs a quick movement, you want to try and get it done in 1 or 2 frames. So you don't want to have too many in-betweens. The least in-betweens, the better in Flash. As you've seen so far, you have to do a lot of fixing in the middle. I know it's going to be a quick movement, so we'll try to do it in 1 frame. as we block everything out here, and we'll see if it works. So what I'm going to do is, because I know my next frame he's going to have that straight torso again, and his knees are going to be unbent, copy the entire initial pose, because it's a lot closer to the next pose that I'm going to set. This is just a little trick that I do. I'm sure other animators do this as well. So just paste that and just clear out the next row of frames that Flash creates. Clear frame. I just copied all the keys on frame 1 over to where I want my next pose to be, and we're going to have them lunge forward in one frame. So I'm going to get rid of this key on the cube. Clear keyframe. So I'm going to select the entire center of the body, and actually, you know what, let's get the arms as well. And actually, you know what, I'm also going to get the legs, just so that make sure the hips don't shift around in the pelvis too much. And let's turn on our onion skinning, and let's really get him leaning forward, maybe on about a 45-degree angle. You always want your character to be looking, their head should be pointing, and their eyes should be looking in the direction that they're going to be going, that they're anticipating to go. Just take a look at your previous drawings and try and make sure the feet don't slide around too much. You can always stretch and skew parts out a little bit. You want to keep that to a minimum though, because it will look like things are popping and growing and shrinking. Okay, so we have an anticipation, and then he's lunging forward. All right, so this next pose that we want to set is we're just going to slow him into a bit of a push. So we're going to do something like this, where he anticipates, he makes contact, and then he's just going to slow in like that. Let's give ourselves about 8 frames down the timeline. It's approximately 8 frames. And set a key. Alright, so we're just going to bring his upper body forward a little bit, just so we get a little bit of a bend in the elbows. And the hands now are going to remain planted. So this is just to show the audience that he's heaving on it, and it's heavy. And now he realizes it. We're going to select the whole upper body. We'll get the upper legs in there as well, and we'll deselect the hands because they're going to stay planted now. So let's just bring them forward just a little bit. Okay, so let's work on the upper body now. So I'm just scrubbing it now so we get this action, and then we'll just fix up the legs. Feet stay planted as well. Now we could stretch these out a little bit if you need to. Alright, so let's just scrub over that. That's good. You could even bring the head forward a little bit as he's struggling to push. He's just kind of giving it a really good heave. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we're going to reposition his feet. We need to get him into a new stance because he's going to anticipate again and give it a really hard shove and start pushing it. So let's give it actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's give it another 5 frames down the timeline. We'll set another key. And on this one, we're just gonna, I really want to slow in with this push. We don't want that to be quick at all. We want that to really push and then just sort of lean into it. So we're gonna do a bit of a moving hold here. And we'll just select this entire body. Let's lock the cube up so we don't select the cube. Let's select this entire body, and sometimes we can do this in Flash where we just skew the whole thing. If you are going to do that though, select the whole body, put the pivot point at the heel that's planted, and just give it a really subtle skew. Don't want to overuse this because it becomes really obvious that it's the entire character is being skewed, but just give it a real subtle skew, almost like a moving hold. And I'm going to bend those elbows a little bit more, just so they don't go with the skew. So bring the forearms, bring the upper arms down a bit. And we'll bend the lower arms, just make sure the elbows are connected. So we have this action, so it just bends a little bit more. So this is going to be slow and then really slow. In fact, that's a little much. Let's just put that pivot back. Let's just skew them a little bit less. You can see exactly how much it is by looking at the last drawing. Just going to bring it in just a little, just a sliver. Alright. Alright, so let's go back down the timeline now. Let's go 5 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or we'll do 4. The less in betweens, the better. I always find it handy to go back and look at what poses we've set so far and see if we can use any, if we can reuse any of the poses that we've set. So I already have an anticipation pose, the first one we did. Let's just reuse that. So I'm going to copy and paste it onto this new pose that we want, which is another anticipation. It's just a quick anticipation. It's going to be less of an anticipation pose as the first one we set, but this is much closer to what we need than the last pose we have. So we'll just copy and paste it over, and then we'll modify it. I'm going to get rid of that last row, that new row of keys. Alright, so he's going to anticipate here. So we just copied our old anticipation pose onto this new row of frames. So let's just lessen this a little bit. We don't want to have him anticipate as much, but we also don't want it to repeat the last anticipation pose, because it'll just be obvious. So we won't have him go over quite as much. Okay, I actually want to keep the foot from the last pose, so we're going to copy that foot over. And we're going to keep this foot as well. Let's just copy it over so that we can ensure that the feet stay planted. So this anticipation pose, I know we changed it up a little bit, but it's kind of weak, so we are going to have to bring him down a little bit. It's just not working. Alright, so he's going to lunge forward again, and this time he's going to start to push this block. So this next pose we're going to get him into is his upper body is going to stay in the same position for quite a while as he pushes the block down across stage. And then we're just going to have him take a few steps with his legs. So let's just give this maybe 2 frames. Or you know what, let's try it in 1 frame. Let's see how that works. So again, we can reuse this last pose that we did. We'll just copy that and paste it on the end here. Paste. Get rid of that row of keys. Okay, so for this one, we're going to have him leaning into the cube a lot further, with his body on more of an angle toward the cube, because he knows it's heavy and he's got to put more of his body weight behind it. Okay, so we're actually going to bend the elbows here. On the next pose we do, we're going to straighten these arms right out. So we want to get a bend on him as he impacts the cube. And then he's going to push. He's going to push off. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Just scrubbing to check my work. And we went from this frame, or sorry, this key pose to this key pose in one frame. So we're going to see how that looks. Nothing's carved in stone yet, as we're still blocking out our work. All right, so now he's going to start to step. Okay, so I'm going to go about 5 frames down the timeline. Okay, so he's going to take about a step and a half, and as he's pushing the cube to the edge, these are going to be slow steps as he's really struggling to push this cube, so he's going to be moving slowly. So we're going to set these keyframes farther apart so we have more in-betweens. Let's straighten his arms out. Okay, so that's the upper body, and we can bring the shoulder forward now as he's pushing. Now let's straighten these legs out. We're going to actually straighten out his left leg, and we're going to start to swing with his right leg. Okay, so we're just going to move this entire body. Make sure that foot stays planted. Okay. So when we scrub over, the left foot stays still and our right foot starting to swing. Let's actually get that right foot right in the middle of the swing, because we're just going to plant it on the next pose. Alright, so we're going to do another 5 frames. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is just work on this lower body for this pose, because we have to plant this foot. Alright, so we'll leave that pose as it is, and we'll move to the next pose. So I'm just going to space these 5 frames apart. Get the whole upper body here. So we're going to shift the entire upper body with the arms and everything just still remaining straight. And we'll just shift the entire upper body down to the right a little bit as he's moving forward. And then we're just going to be animating the legs now from here on in. Okay, so we got to keep that right foot planted, so we're going to grab everything here and bring that right toe right to where the last one is. So we can adjust this timing later. I know that this is going to be much slower, so we'll have to bring this whole row of keys out much farther, but for now we'll just play with this. Just get our poses in and adjust the timing later. Okay, so I'm just taking a look at this and I'm thinking the cube would be getting close to the edge here, so maybe what we should do before we go any further is actually just bring our cube out. We'll unlock the cube for now, set a key. It's still on the outline mode, but we'll just move it over. We can still see where it would be. So I'm just going to bring the edge of the cube there right to the ball of his hand. Actually, let's take a look at it. Okay, so once it's about halfway over the edge, it should start to fall. So really what I'm going to do is just have him plant his foot, and we're just going to end this walk. We can have him push it off the edge. I'm just going to slide this whole row out a little further. I know that's going to be a slow movement. Alright, so I'm just going to put the cube back to outline so I can work through it, and let's set the next pose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, so our left leg is going to plant now. We got the left leg planted. Alright, so we're going to go into another swing pose. So it's going to be as far as a distance as these 2 poses are. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. About 9 frames apart. And this is going to be a right leg swing. So let's bring our onion skinning slider back to see the distance that we went for the last swing, and bring the entire upper body over the same amount. This should get the block off the edge. So we'll bring our left leg back for the push off. So let's just take a look at our block. So at this point, I'm just going to set a key on it and unlock it. Bring it back to where, okay, so yeah, it's definitely going to be falling off by this point. I'm just going to set a key on this last pose for the cube and take a look at where it would be here. Because we might not have needed that other step. Not really, no. What we could do is set a tween here. Let's create a classic tween. And we can go in the middle of this. And we'll set another key. So this will give us a keyframe for the position in the middle between these two poses. And we'll set a key, and then we'll just take our tweens out again. Remove our tweens. We only want to get to the point where we only want our mannequin to get as far as we need to. So as soon as this block starts to fall, he's going to squash and settle back up. So this is too far because the block will already be falling here. So we'll get rid of that key. Clear keyframes. So right about when the block's halfway off the edge, maybe a little more, it'll start to fall. Okay, so we got our character keyed. We set that tween and then just made a new key, which is somewhere in between his foot swing. So let's see what we have here. Right, and we're just going to get rid of this last pose. Clear keyframe. Alright, so we'll have to adjust this pose here. And we want to keep that left foot planted. So I'm just going to copy that foot over to the next key pose. Copy. Paste. Make sure the toe lines up with the toe from the last drawing. And the right leg was in mid swing. So we're going to just fix that up a little bit. Let's scrub over that and see what we got. Don't worry about the cube popping all over the place. In fact, let's just shut it off for now. Okay, so the cube's going to be at this point just about ready to fall. It's falling a little bit. Let's give it about maybe 4 or 5 frames down the timeline. Let's just slow it out of this pose here. And for now, we're just going to quickly animate this. So we'll be slowed out of its first pose, and now we're going to go almost down to the ground. This will be our next pose, and we're going to do that in 1 frame. And then 1 more frame, and we'll just make contact with the ground, but let's switch it up. Let's switch the block. We have a few blocks in here. Inside this block, there's a whole bunch of angles of this block for when it lands. This one. Alright, so let's take onion skinning off. Let's take a look at that. Okay, this is just rough. It's good for now. We just want to get the block off the ledge so that we can continue animating our character without the block in the way. I'm just going to tween this so we can actually see how far away it is from the mannequin. Okay. And we can adjust this later too. 4 more frames down the timeline, and we're going to get him to overshoot. As the block leaves his hands, the momentum's going to carry him forward. So we'll just overshoot his pose a little bit. So we'll grab the whole upper body, including the upper legs. Turn on onion skinning so we can see. I have my range really wide, so I'm just going to shorten that so I can see the last pose. 4 frames, 4 in-betweens between these 2 poses. Alright, and I'm just going to lead him forward. And this is basically just the blocks starting to fall. So it's leaving his hands, and the momentum of his pushing is carrying him forward a little bit, but he's going to catch himself, and then he's going to catch himself, squash, and then settle back up. We're going to swing the right leg forward as he's overshooting. He's going to have to catch himself with one of his feet. And he's leaned so far forward that he would really just fall over if he doesn't catch himself with a foot. So we're going to bring this foot forward. And let's see if we'll plant it. Should plant it under his body. So you're looking at this angle of his body here, right about mid-torso. His foot should be somewhere underneath the middle of his torso in order to balance his weight. And this foot can stay planted. Alright, let's scrub through, see what we have. So he's pushing, he's in mid-swing. Now the block's rolling off the ledge. He'll overshoot with momentum because of the force that he was putting on the cube. And then we're going to have him squash back up and settle. So 2 more poses. So the squash can be rather quick because he's just catching himself from falling. So we'll break the elbows and drag the hands as he's going into his squash position. And we want to make sure we silhouette these poses a little bit so we don't have this hands going in front of the forearm. I'm going to give a little bit of space here so it reads clearly to the audience. So to give that torso a bit of a skew. Okay, so let's take a look at the lower body now. Okay, so we can start to step this foot back a little bit. So we're just going to break the knee. Okay, now we're going to bring him back up the settle, but we got to plant this foot first. Alright, so let's plant the foot in 2 more frames. And we'll straighten his body out a little bit as well, and then we can go into his default position. So the left foot has to stay planted. So you can see in our last position, all the weight's on the left leg. So we're going to keep that foot planted and just bring the right foot down and plant that. We're going to go to torso 2 and just unskew it. Let's get the neck and head starting to rise back up. So we're going to unhunch him a little bit as he's on his way back up. We can give a little bit of drag to the head. And we'll bring this arm back. We want to balance this pose out a little bit. Otherwise he'd be falling forward. Okay, so this pose isn't looking too great. It's really unbalanced. So I'm going to bring this upper body a little bit further up. There we go. You just want to get that center of body underneath one of the heels. Alright. And then we're going to go to our his default pose. So we're just going to copy frame 1. And let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's going to settle into this, so we want to get some in-betweens in here. And let's get rid of that last row of keys from copy and pasting. Clear keyframe. Okay, now he's way over there, so we're just going to bring him right back. Whoops. Let's bring him back over here. And we got to hook up the feet. So his left leg was planted. So let's go in and just match up the toes. There we go. Let's rough in our block. Okay, this is the point in which he makes first contact with the cube. So let's get in there and just shift the block so that it's right at the ball of his hand there. And it's going to stay put until he hits this pose. So we'll key it here, and then we'll move it over. So I'm just going to all the key poses where the cube is and keying it where I see it needs to, wherever the character moves. We're just going to keep the block caught up to where his positions. Bring the block back to where it needs to be in his hand. And then it falls. I'm just adjusting some of the timing for the cube so it falls a little quicker. We want to see that overshooting action happen. Let's tween all this and see how it looks. Okay, so we don't want the cube moving like that. So we'll just get rid of this tween. Should just get rid of that key. Alright, so we have all of our basic blocking in. Now let's have a look at our timing and we can start making adjustments. So let's just play it. Okay, it's not looking too bad, but remember these two poses that we put right next to each other, this anticipation pose and the pose where he contacts the cube. It's a little quick. I'm just going to play it again. So I'm just going to add one in between there just by shifting the entire block over, or the entire section of keys. We're going to grab the pose where he contacts the cube from there to the end and just grab it and shift it over one frame. That gives us one in between. And that's why I tried to get away without having an in between, because we have to fix that. It was too fast the way it was, so that's better. We need at least one in between there. So we're going to work on the mannequin right now, and we'll just adjust the cube after. So let's actually put the cube on outlines, just so it's not so distracting. We can select our mannequin. So I'm just going to keep playing it and see where I need to make adjustments and the timing. Okay, so that second anticipation and contact is also too quick. We're going to add an in between in there as well. Go to the pose where he contacts the cube, and then go to the bottom of the last layer, and we'll just drag that right over, and we'll play that again, just that section. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. The only thing I really want to do here now, so I'm just going to scrub over this, just checking this out. Let's get in a little closer here, and I just want to ease into our last pose a little bit more gradually. So what I'm going to do is just go about 4 or 5 frames down the timeline, and I'm going to set a new pose, a new row of keyframes. And what we can do is just go to the previous pose, and we'll just move it in a little bit, move it in closer to what this is, so that it'll ease in. So we'll select the whole upper body without the knees, and let's try and just ease in with the upper body. So we're just going to give it a tiny bit of rotation, and maybe a little drag with the head. And what we could do also is just grab the entire character, and we'll do a bit of a skew on it. Okay, so move the pivot point to the heel, and we'll just skew him a little bit. If you are going to do this, use this technique, always skew it this way. Don't skew it this way, because you can see it messes with the feet too much. And let's just tween that section, and we'll scrub over and see how it looks. Okay, so that's a nice cushion in. And we can even select the entire row of in-betweens, and in your properties, let's ease it. Let's go all the way to 100, and that'll ease it in nice and slow. Okay, so the arms are everything's moving at the same time here on that ease. So let's just maybe give the hands a bit of drag, and maybe even a little bit on the elbow too. Just break the elbow a tiny bit. Just a subtle, very subtle amount. Okay, so let's just watch the whole thing again. Really paying attention to our timing. We really want to get our timing locked down so that when we go in and start making adjustments to these in between areas, between our key poses, and start swapping our symbols, it's going to be a lot more difficult to adjust the timing then at that point. So we really want to lock our timing down now. So let's just go with that. So now I'm going to go through and make the adjustments on our cube. So I'm going to scrub through, see what our mannequin's doing. Okay, so we don't want the cube to pop like that. So I'm going to get rid of this keyframe. Clear keyframe. So I'll set a key here, and we can shift it over a tiny bit on this new frame. Just so we can in between it, between this pose and this pose, because that really pops over a lot, way too much. So let's turn our onion skinning on and select our cube and just move it over so we can get it right in between, or we can actually have it slow out a little bit. Let's see how that looks. So he gives it a really hard shove. And then we go from this pose. So he's not even touching it here, and it's moving, so we don't want that to happen. So we'll slide this key over, right up butt against this key. So just make sure that the cube doesn't move until he actually touches it. Now we'll just fix the part where it drops. I'm just going to put my onion skinning back on so I can see all the in-betweens. So I don't want to lose his hand behind the block, so let's just scrub through and make sure that we don't do that. Okay, so we have a little bit of an ease as it starts to fall, and we want to get that in the middle. So let's onion skin again, and we'll get this drawing right in the middle. Right in the middle between our previous and next drawings. So this can be quick, and we'll accent it with a little bit of a bounce at the end. Okay, and these will just be, we can do 2 frames for a bounce. Let's try 2 frames for a bounce. So this is the pose where it hits the ground. And then we're just going to go 1 keyframe over and just raise it up a tiny bit. And I'm going to do another keyframe right next to it and go up just even less, just to cushion that bounce. And then the next keyframe, we're going to go right back to the ground again. So let's go back to the keyframe where it hits the ground, which is this one. And we'll copy it and paste it right at the end. So let's just scrub over that. Okay, so instead of having it bounce straight up and down, let's have it bounce over to the right a tiny bit. So it hits the ground. We have 2 keyframes for it bouncing up in the air, or just a slight bit. So on the first one, so that hits the ground on this keyframe. The first bounce up, I'm just going to shift it over to the right, just ever so slightly. Just 2 taps to the right, and then on the second one, 1, 2, 3 taps to the right, and then on the last one where it hits the ground again, we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4 taps to the right. That way we get a little bit of a bounce so that the block looks like it's carrying its momentum from being dropped. Now let's go through and just fix our feet and some of the other in-betweens. And let's look between our first pose and our second pose. Right, so there's some fixing to do there. And it's not so much in the legs, but it's with the arms. And it's the lower arms and hands. So let's take a look. Sometimes I'll just go to the key pose and select the body parts, just so I can identify where the layer is. Every frame in between those 2 poses needs to be fixed. So I'm just going to select the whole block. I didn't need the shoulder. Clear keyframe. I'm going to key all the frames with the hands. Alright, so what we'll do is, since these in-betweens are completely messed up, what we're going to do is copy the first frame for just the lower arm and the hand. We'll copy frames and we'll just paste it over one. Then we'll do the same thing with pose 2. We'll copy those frames and move them in toward the middle and paste them. And then just sort of fix them, put them back, put the elbow back together. So we know when we scrub through now, we know that arm's supposed to be bending up into this position. So we copied this, so it's going to be in the same places as where we copied it from, but we can just move it right back. Let's put the elbow back, but we know that that arm's supposed to be coming up, so let's start to bend it. And then we can just paste it in the center here as well. And then let's scrub over that. Just need to get from point A to point B. You can at this point choose to slow in a little bit so you can bring this closer to what the first pose is. And we can drag the hand a little too. Okay, so this also gives us an opportunity to swap the symbol, which it already does, but we can drag that hand down a little bit just to give it the illusion that it has weight. And we'll bring that over. So there's the pop. There's where the hand switches. Right in mid-motion. That's where we want it. Alright, now let's fix the other forearm and hand. And we're just going to do the same thing here. Okay, so the upper body looks pretty good. Didn't have to do as much work with the left forearm and hand. Well, first of all, the hand doesn't swap twin switch symbols, and the elbow goes behind the body, so you don't see it too much. So speaking of the body, the torso does come off the pelvis a little bit. So I'm just going to go to my key pose and select the torso. And the torso does swap, so what we should do is have it swap in the center here. I'm going to press F6 and change that to, I believe it's 2. Nope, it's 3. So we'll change that to 3. You don't want to go from 1 to 2 to 3. It pops too much. So just go directly to 3, the third torso. Okay, so we're going to switch it there. Let's connect it back to the pelvis, and maybe we can skew it a little. Okay, so we're going to have to key every frame in between these. Okay, so we scrubbed through and the torso looks okay. Sometimes when you make adjustments to the torso, you have to move the arm over a little bit, but here it doesn't look too bad. Okay, so I think we're good between the first two poses. Foot slides over a little bit. So these two poses are the ones that we created a new in-between for when we adjusted our timing. So where do the problems lie? In the arms and in the knees. So what we're going to do is, you know what, for this one, since there's so many issues, let's just create an entire row of keyframes and let's work on the upper body. Alright, so I'll get the torso first. We'll skew that a little bit. Just make sure it connects at the pelvis and let's skew it into place. So I think the head and neck are okay, but let's get the arms. Okay, so we go from an anticipation pose to a straight. So we have to get something in between there. Okay, I think that looks pretty good for the upper body. And let's just fix those legs. It's just a matter of moving them back into place here. Okay, so I don't like the way that ankle's going into the foot too much. Of course, we can get a little bit more meticulous here and make sure that there's little imperfections here and there, and I'd want you guys to go through and get really picky with it, but right now we're just going to get through this lesson. This ease in where he's pushing against the cube is okay. And let's check the next section. Okay, so we have some things to fix here. You don't really need to touch the upper arms, it's just the lower arms. You have to make sure that they're arcing nicely. So let's set a key in the middle here and just put them back into place and see where that leaves us. Nope, we're going to have to key all the in-betweens here and just put these forearms and hands back to where they need to be. Connect them to the elbows on all the in-between frames, and I'm going to outline that cube that's in my way right now. Okay, so we'll select all these in-betweens between the left forearm and hand, set a key. I'm just going to key all the in-betweens for the torso, and we're going to grab the entire upper body because I'm worried about the shoulders disconnecting, so we will have to key the upper arms as well. Okay, so right about in the center between these two poses, I'm going to pop the torso because it does go to it's the torso number 3. So we'll do it 1, 2, 3. We'll do it right about here, and then we can just skew it a bit, skew it and bring it back so the shoulders match up. So in mid motion, the torso pops and swaps to torso number 1 to torso 3. Now let's get the legs. So we'll just do one in the middle. See how that works out for us. I'm just going to cheat a bit here and just scale those a little bit. I think that'll work out okay. This is our second push at the cube, and we have lots of problems here. Let's get the torso first. So let's work on the upper body. So right in the middle of this, we're going to switch the symbol. So F6, I believe he goes back to 1. So right in the middle, we're going to switch it to 1. And it's skewed from the last pose, so we're just going to move it back. The head and neck are okay here. Yeah, we're going to do the same thing we did on the last antic and just select the entire row. There's just too many issues going on. That way we can just move everything back, just select and move. Alright, so let's switch the symbols on the feet. These are feet number 16. So let's just switch the symbols on the feet right in the center. Alright, let's go in between our next two. We're almost halfway done. Okay, so it's not so bad on the push. When he starts to push it forward, the upper body stays pretty still. And we really just got to worry about some knee breakage, knee and ankle breakage. Alright, so let's just grab these feet. Alright, I'm just going to set a key in the center. And see if I'll put the knee together and see if we can just get away with that one keyframe fix. Nope, we need to set another key and move that knee back to where it's supposed to be. Okay, and we're going to swap the foot in mid-motion. So we're going to do it in the middle here. Do it in the middle or sometime before it hits the ground. I'm going to do it about 2 frames before. So what foot is that? Let's go to the frame where that foot is. It's number 3. Just check it in here. And go back to where we want to flip it. And number 3. And let's put it back on the ankle. It's coming off the ankle here, so I'm going to set a key and fix that. And rotate it a bit. So when we scrub through, it looks a little nicer except for that frame. So we'll just set another key and put it back to where it's supposed to be. And now it's fine. Okay, so in between the next section. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So let's go 5 right in the middle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we'll just fix these up right in the middle and see where we're at. Make sure the toe stays planted. I'm going to set keys wherever I see an issue and just sort of fix the pose a little bit. We can avoid all this fixing by setting more key poses. I like to get the blocking done rather quickly and then just make the adjustments after. So I generally like to go to the worst part of it and just fix that, and oftentimes that'll do the trick. Okay, so I'm going to check out the right foot now. Sorry, the left foot, the one that's in the back. Okay, so that's okay for this area. Let's go between the next two key poses. Okay, so it's just the leg swing forward. Alright, so we're going to swap that foot now. Just going to set some keys in the center, and we'll swap that foot. So I'm going to go to the frame where it's swapped. It's frame 7, or foot number 7. So we'll switch that foot out now. And I can see on this frame it's off as well. So I'm going to set a key there and fix it. I'll take a look at the next section. And it's just the left foot that we have a problem with. So I'm going to set 2 keys in the middle because I know that's going to be a problem. So it goes back to 16. So we'll just swap it in the center. Yeah, it's sliding around, so we're just going to move it back into place. Okay, I don't like how that foot's popping down like that. So we're going to move that entire leg up since he's putting his weight on this leg. Okay, so we're going to have to set keys on the entire leg here. Okay, so I'm going to cheat a little bit and skew that leg back. It slides a bit, but you guys can fix that. I'm just going to move on with the lesson here. There's still some in-betweens that need to be fixed. I'm just going to get the major problems, and then I'll leave it up to you guys to do the fine tweaking. I'm finding these 2 poses to be a little too quick when it plays out. Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to separate these 2 poses a little bit before I start fixing in-betweens. I'm just going to give it 1 frame and play it again. It's a little better. Okay. Yeah, I see the foot here, but I'm not going to fix that right now. I'm just going to fix this stuff here. He's got his weight on his farther back foot. It's the left foot. So what we're going to do is just make sure that foot stays planted first. That's the first thing we're going to do because that's the biggest problem here. So we'll swap that symbol out too. So it goes from foot 16 to foot 1. So we'll swap that out right in the middle. Okay, I'm just going to drag this leg back a little bit just so everything's not moving at the same time. It's always good to offset some of your limbs, your right and left legs. You want everything moving together at the same time and stopping at the same time. And we'll swap that foot out for foot number 2. Yeah, and again, I think it's because our pivots are off, but we're going to set a key on all those in-betweens and just fix everything up here. So I'm just scaling this to get it closer to this foot on the frame right before it swaps. Just gives it the impression that it's turning. And you can even skew and scale the foot after it. Okay, there's a little bit of a bounce in the leg, but I'll leave that for now. Again, you guys can refine that further. Just make sure yours doesn't have anything like that. Okay, so let's get this torso and upper body. So it goes from torso 1 to torso 3. So let's just switch it right to torso 3 here. I'm just going through this whole motion here and just fixing the torso right now. Sometimes it's just a matter of moving it a little bit. Sometimes you have to skew it and move it. Okay, so that torso looks fine all through here. Did the legs, get the torso, and now we're going to get the hands. So actually the left arm looks okay. It's just that right arm. And the elbow looks okay. It's just the hand flipping around. So let's select that. Okay, so we'll copy this hand into the center where it's the worst. And we'll just move it over. We copied it and pasted it there. And we'll copy this hand, copy frames, paste it right next to the one we pasted just a second ago. And we can have the flip happen right there. Okay, so we're going to have to fix those last few frames. Turn our cube back on. Make sure the block that he's pushing is still working with the animation of our mannequin. The only thing I'm not happy with is that on his first push, when he first hits this, well, first of all, it starts to move before he touches it. But it really just, the whole cube doesn't look very heavy. It pops over to the right. I'm just going to delete this first key, and we're going to copy the second key onto the first key. There. So it stays there. Okay, so if we tween these, it should shift a tiny bit. Great classic tween. Let's just get in close and take a look at that. Okay, so we can have that motion stop. Let's copy this frame and stop it here. So there shouldn't be any motion in here whatsoever. We can just remove the tween so we know. So it moves a tiny bit when he pushes here. Really just want to keep that block right on the ball of his hand there. I just moved it on this key, so I'm going to have to copy it, paste it here. There should be no tween there. There we go. That's what I want to happen. So as soon as he hits it, it just moves a tiny bit. And then his second time he hits it, it leans further forward and puts his weight into it. Remember to always block first and send it to me, and then I'll take a look at it, give you some feedback, so that you can continue with your refining pass. I won't go over this anymore, but as we always do, we go to File, Save it as a new name. Usually I put Animated at the end of the name, and then you guys know how to do the export video. And please make sure it's a QuickTime 720p.